Now let's do a numerical example on the effect, of the effect of taxes on welfare. Right. Now I changed the equation a little bit from the original handout, right? And so to give you a slightly different number, like for you to play around with. Right? So here's our demand, and here is our supply. Now even though this is a numerical example, I highly encourage you to sketch, right? Because sketching the problem will help guide you on what to do next. Right? So again, my sketch, I only really care about identifying the intercept, right? So there's 200 minus 3q, right? And just a quick slope like that is enough. And then here's 20, right? Plus 2q. Then I'm going to just slope upwards like this. Okay. Now, so let's say find the equilibrium quantity and price. Well, once I have the sketch, I know that the equilibrium quantity will be there and the equilibrium price will be here. And so here is where your algebra instincts might kick in. How do I find their intercept? Or sorry, how do I find those two values? Well, I set the equations equal to each other. Here we go. Here's 200 minus 3q equals 20 plus 2q. Right? And the rest is algebra. 180 equals 5q. Therefore, q star. Put a star when you reach your conclusion. Right? 180 divided by 5, and that's going to be 36. So here we go, my Q star, my equilibrium quantity is 36. Now, I also want the equilibrium price. How do I find that? I plug 36n in either one of these equations, and then see how the sketch kind of guides you on what to do next. So 36, so here I'm going to go ahead and just do 200 minus 3 times 36, right? And therefore give me 92. So here's my equilibrium price is 92. All right. Now, what is a CSPS, total social welfare? Here's my consumer surplus. Here is my producer surplus. That is in the shape of a triangle. So CS equals area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. 1/2. A triangle has 3 bases. Here's the base, here's a base, here's a base. Right? So I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to use this as my base. 36 times, now I'm going to use this as my height. 200 minus 92. 200 minus 92. So that's my height. Okay. Here, I'm going to set this up. I'm going to set it up. I'm going to set up producer surplus as well. Again, base 36. The height, right? The difference here, 92 minus 20. Okay. Plug all that in the calculator. Okay, so you will get 1944 here and 1296, right, for the producer surplus. All right. Again, here, there's nothing else. There's no taxes. There's no externality. So my total social welfare is just CS plus PES, which just equals 1944 plus 1296. Here we go. 1944 plus 1296. That gives me 3240. Okay. If you're following along with your lecture from class, know that I did change the number here to give you a slightly different example. Okay. Now, suppose a tax of $30 is imposed on the supplier. What is the new equilibrium price and quantity? Earlier, right, we use the wedge method. Here, let me show you here. Right, we use the wedge method to illustrate the effect of a tax. Now, this is convenient when we want to know who pays what, how much does the consumer pay, and how much does the producer pay. However, in the numerical example, the wedge method still works, but I think it's more complicated, and so I'm going to offer you a different method. Like this is going to be an easier method to do. And also, right, it doesn't matter who we tax, right? It doesn't matter who we tax. So if I change this name, if I change this question to $30 is imposed on the consumer, everything will be the same. I will still shift the supply curve. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So let me do the supply first. Here's $20, right? And then here's my supply curve. Now, I'm imposing the $30 on the supplier, so I'm shifting up. I'm shifting up supply by $30, right? Because it's more expensive to produce. So the supply curve is shift upward 30, was 20 plus 30, 50. Okay. Now, if I change this to tax imposed on consumers to find the end result, you can still do this. You will still shift the supply curve. Okay. All right. Demand has not changed. So that's my demand, and here's 200. Okay. But what do I see here? Now my new equilibrium, let's call that Q bar here. My new equilibrium is there, right? And like we said before, whenever you tax something, you get less of it, right? So the quantity has decreased. Okay, and here is my new equilibrium price. Let's call that P bar. Right? So to find that, I still set equation to equal to each other. My new equation is the old demand and the new supply. So here we go. 200 minus 3Q equals 20 plus, oh, not 20, excuse me, 2Q. It's the 50 plus 2Q. Sorry about that. It's 50. Right? I am setting my new supply curve equal to that. Right? The rest is algebra. I'm going to follow 150 equals 5Q. And that gives me, right, 150 divided by 5. So give me 30. So my new Q bar now equals 30. Okay. So Q bar is 30 down here. All right. It should be, you should expect a number less than the previous equilibrium quantity. My P bar, plug that into either one of these equations. To be safe, just go ahead and put it in the demand. 3 times 30. Okay, so that is 110. All right, you should be expecting, 110. You should be expecting a price that is higher than the previous equilibrium price, because now you added a tax. Right? When you tax something, it does not get cheaper. Okay. All right, what is the new consumer surplus, producer surplus, total welfare, and etc.? So I'm going to give you a shortcut, right? Because I could put the wedge in here and then find the CSPS that way. However, that overcomplicates this graph, right? So right now, I'm going to show you, you can identify the consumer surplus and the producer surplus right here. It's going to be these two triangles, okay? Now, don't graph the tax revenue here. That would just overcomplicate things. We can calculate that separately. Here we go. CS equals 1/2. Here's my base. Now is 30 times the height, 200 minus 110. Okay. PS equals 1/2. Again, my new base is 30. And then the height now is 110 minus 50. Okay, 110 minus 50. So that's my triangle here. All right. Okay, set that up. Plug that in the calculator. Okay, so that should be a consumer surplus and producer surplus. Right? Notice how they're both smaller than previous results. All right. Now, how do I get the tax revenue? It's not written here, right? It's not drawn on here. But remember, tax revenue is just a rectangle. Why is it a rectangle? Because it's a per unit tax. No, my tax revenue, it's $30 per unit of production. So every unit I'm charging $30. So then it's $30 times how much I produce. So look on the graph, right? Or look here. I produce 30, right? 30 times 30 will give you 900. My total tax revenue is 900. Okay. Now, my total social welfare is consumer surplus plus producer surplus plus the tax revenue. Now, before you finish calculating, this number, right? Think about it, should it be higher or lower than my previous total social welfare? And your intuition should tell you that it should be lower. Why? Because I have what is called a deadweight loss. Right? I have this small triangle here that is taken away from consumer surplus and producer surplus. Right? So the total here, 3150. Okay, and that is the numerical method.